welcome to another episode of Relationship Alive. My name is Neil Satin. I'm your host, and I'm excited to be back here today with one of our regular esteemed guests here on the show, Dr. Peter Levine, who was the author of Waking the Tiger, developer of Somatic Experiencing, and we've had him here a number of times to talk about how to become more resilient in yourself, in your body, more resilient in your relationship with your partner, and more resilient as you meet the world. And so I encourage you to check out the earlier episodes that we've had together. Those are episodes 29, 127, and 198. I think I got that right. But in case
am I just a number to you?
You're not just a number, Peter.
Good.
But for you at home, if you want an easy way to get to those episodes, you can go to neilsatin.com/ now I'm going to feel bad saying this, Peter, but /Peter1, Peter2, Peter3. And today this will be Peter4. And that will make it easier for you to orient and to find your way back to our conversations together.
I think this is going to be a very different one.
I think so too. Yeah, because we've had a lot of time and experience getting to know each other for all of this time. And it was funny, in preparing for this conversation, I went back and listened to all of our prior conversations. And it was funny to hear like, oh yeah, that was us just kind of getting to know each other back then, without the benefit of some time canoeing or sharing a meal together and that sort of thing.
Right. Opening to a relationship, really.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is one reason why I'm really excited to have you here on the show. Because I think that connection is hopefully going to allow us to go deeper today and explore some uncharted territory. Yeah. So I guess officially, Peter Levine, welcome back to Relationship Alive. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, good seeing you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Looks like things are going well in your life.
Things are decent, yeah, and you look nice and fresh too.
Well, just came back from swim.
Nice. And you mentioned that you're right now in Mexico working on a revised edition of Waking the Tiger?
That's right. And I've been doing a bunch of interviews also around the book that I just released, an autobiography of trauma, a healing journey.
Right.
So I've been pretty busy, and it's really nice to work with somebody else, because Maggie has been my co-author for 2 books. And so she and I are working together to revise Waking the Tiger, because it's like over 35 years old. And at the time it was revolutionary. Well, in some ways it still is, but it does need to be updated.
Yeah, well, it's good that you're able to revisit it with the benefit of 35 years of experience and having...
Exactamente.
Yeah. And so to me, it was important also one of the reasons that I wanted to revisit our earlier conversations, one was to make sure we don't repeat too much, because that's what those other episodes are for. But at the same time, to think about like, what haven't we really talked about yet? And obviously for the show, we've only spoken 3 times. So there's a whole world of things that we haven't talked about.
Sure.
But specifically, I was thinking about how when you're in relationship, and, we've talked a lot about the ways that your day-to-day experience bring up echoes of the past, memories, feelings, sensations in your body from the past. And in fact, in one of those episodes, we talked a lot about how to, when you're with your partner, how to figure out, like, is this something that's happening here in the moment, or is this just a ripple from the past? And how do you work with that?
Or is it both? And how do you kind of tease them apart?
Yeah, exactly. One thing, though, that we didn't really touch on is that for most people, I'm imagining they have an experience that's somewhat like mine, and maybe you tell me if you can relate to this. There's the ways that when you're in a relationship, when you're in a partnership, and you have all the experiences that can add up over time that can lead you to potentially associate lots of joyful memories with your partner, and hopefully you are working on building a positive
Oh, yeah.
narrative.
Yes, for sure. Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but on the flip side, you also have experiences of fights and conflicts and maybe even
Mm.
betrayals on some level.
Yeah, sure.
And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so
There's
it
there's joy and pain.
right, right, which is that's relationship. Like there's no way
That's
to
relationship.
escape.
Yeah, right.
However, one thing that can happen, especially if you, let's say you're fresh out of a fight with your partner, some sort of conflict, is the way that the sight of your partner can evoke those feelings of danger,
Yeah.
the triggered
Mhm.
fight or flight. And you can see it,
Right.
right? There's that, you see them and they look locked down. And if they were looking at you, they might think that you looked a little locked down too, a
Mhm.
little dangerous.
Yeah, yeah, I think we definitely have an open field for projections.
Right, right,
Right. But I think one of the keys when we get into one of those gnarly situations is to learn how to internally focus with self-regulation first, I think, and then to work with your partner on co-regulation. It's kind of like the opposite of when we were very, very young, when we were babies, hopefully with our guardian, with our parent, maybe with our mother, that she helped us to regulate our arousal states. Because an infant can't do that. I mean, they they can't put on a sweater when they're cold,
right, right,
and they need that adult to help regulate them so they know what it's like, and so they can move from co-regulation over time to authentic self-regulation. And in a way, here we're doing that in reverse. We're going, hopefully, from self-regulation to co-regulation as a way of connecting, as a way of reconnecting.
right. So, what would you, how would you recommend that? Like, let's say maybe we'll start with kind of the acute situation that I just described, where you walk into a room and yeah, and you see your partner, and maybe you had something happen the night before, and it's that moment where you're both in the same room and you're doing that dance around like, are we okay? Are we not okay?
Yeah,
What would be a step into that scenario that might lead to reconnection in a tense space, a
yeah.
tense
Mhm.
moment?
I mean, if we can speak from a vulnerable part of ourselves, that can make a big difference.
Hmm.
Like, honey, you know, the argument we had last night, I've really been thinking about it. And I realized I just kind of jumped at you. And so I'm sorry for that. And I hope that we can reconnect with each other and kind of find our way back into connection.
Yeah, as
And
I
that's easier said than done, of course,
right,
but it can be done. It can be done. And it gets easier, better and easier with practice. I mean, at least that's my experience.
sure, sure. And do you find that, or do you imagine that leading the way in a
Yeah.
situation like that is kind of the way to step into it versus like trying to ask your partner something or trying to draw them out some way, trying to help them
Yeah. No, I
find
think
you.
you can do that, but it's likely to blow up in your face.
Right.
Um, so I mean, my limited experience is that we have to acknowledge, what's going on with ourselves, with our own vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's in a way, I'm speaking from good experience necessarily, but but it's I don't want to put this, when we're vulnerable, that allows our heart to open.
Hmm.
And we can go from fighting to heart opening. I think that can really make a big, big difference in the movement of our,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, of our stuff.
Yeah. That makes sense. And it reminds me of what you were saying a moment ago that like you need to start by self regulating. Cause I imagine
Yeah.
that as soon as you walk into that room and you feel that bristly feeling in the air, exactly, that's a moment where probably before you offer the vulnerable
Yeah.
thing.
And I think also it's important to say, sweetheart, I just realized that I'm kind of activated right now. Can we maybe just get back in a few minutes or in an hour or whatever and continue? Because I want to be able to clear myself so I can be open to you and
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah. Now, are there ways that like let's say you do that and your partner is still like really locked down. Like
Yeah.
they're not ready.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
what occurs to you as a way to
yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the situation, of course, but
just to be
maybe.
clear, I'm not speaking about something specific. I'm just speaking like these things happen all the time, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
No,
mean,
I
right?
think I think to say, sweetheart, it seemed like, and the affectionate name you call your partner, whatever that is, and it seems like you're still kind of, it, it, um, you don't want to say stuck. Maybe something like it seems like you're in a little bit of pain right now. So maybe you just need some more time, but maybe we need some more time. So let's just agree to come back tomorrow or whatever,
Mm,
and then see if we're able to connect better then. And I'll continue to work on my stuff so that I can be more present for you. So, I mean, I think it's really important to turn it around in a positive way and maybe even talk about situations where we had a successful renegotiation,
mm,
and say, it reminds me of the time that we were really felt like we were going to just like strangle each other. But I remember when we both could kind of talk about what's going on with us, it really seemed to shift.
yeah.
And so hopefully our partner says, yeah, I think I know what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Right. So there's so much there. There's like, how do you offer your own vulnerability? How do you um, create some space, like relax the time pressure a little bit, and even acknowledge like, hey, you're like, I can tell that you're still having some big feelings about this, and I don't blame you. Maybe we can revisit later to just you're acknowledging their feelings. You're
That's right.
creating
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that space,
exactly.
reminding
Yeah,
them of a past success. Yeah, all of that makes sense.
yeah, all of the above, all of the above. It's kind of interesting um, about relationships is that 2 or 3 years ago, I'm at the age, Neil, where clearly I have less years ahead of me than I've had years from conception to where I am right now. And so I wanted to really journal you talked about narrative, but to journal the narrative of my life, to be able to start from the beginning and coming to where I am now, and then going to where I'll be in some more years and living my dying. And so I wrote this as a journal. I had only meant to have it as a journal. And my friend, my partner, Laura, she asked me, or she said to me, I assume that you're going to publish this as a book. And I remember saying, there's no way I would publish this. It's too vulnerable in places where it's too raw,
Mm.
too delicate. It's revealing things about myself that no people really even know about kind of like the backstory in a way of developing somatic experiencing.
Mm.
How is it that I went on my journey of self-discovery and then went from that point to, in a way, to model for other people to write their own stories, to journal their own stories, and to write their own stories. But again, I said, I just can't imagine doing it. It would be too vulnerable. And I think she held back, saying something like, "Oh, really?" and and so anyhow, I let it go. I mean, I was listening to what she said, but I wasn't ready yet to do that, to
Mm.
commit to that, because writing a book is a pretty big commitment. So anyhow, I just let it stew for a couple years, and then I had the following dream, and I'm standing in front of this large field, and I have in my hands, both of my hands, a whole bunch of manuscript papers. At least I assume that's what they were. And I look to the left and to the right and back to the left. And clearly I can't make the decision. I'm conflicted.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment of conflict, this strong breeze comes from behind me and takes all of these pages, lifts them out of my hands into the meadow to land where they may land. And when I woke, this is sometimes this is often the case for me with dreams. I realized the dream had made the decision for me,
Mm.
and that I would let these pages land where they might land, for other people to read and hopefully to be inspired. And yeah, and so, I went through again the trajectory of my life and some of the severe traumas. We talked a little bit about going to an important positive experience.
Just a quick note. Peter is about to share how revisiting a powerful positive memory and the sensations that come with it helped him heal from a severe childhood trauma, which includes sexual abuse. If that's tender territory for you today, you can skip ahead about 90 seconds, and that will take you past the hardest part and into how he actually worked through it. I just want to make sure you're taking good care of yourself. Mm-hmm.
Because when I was a child, probably around 10 or 12 years old, it was a long story, but my father was in danger from the mafia.
Mm.
And, and because of that, the mafia people had raped me
Mm.
as a way of sending a strong message to my parents. They also told my father that if he testified against Johnny Dio Wato, and you can see he's not a nice guy. I mean, he's really not a nice guy. I'll show you a picture of him if you want.
Sure.
There's my dear friend Albert, but this is Johnny Dio.
Yeah.
So we lived under the umbrella of him killing us. And this is a memory I did not have consciously. It had been walled off, and but I was experiencing some physical symptoms and some momentary flashes of images, and I realized that it was time for me to take a dose of my own medicine. So, as with Chiron, the wounded healer, I asked one of my students to sit with me and to guide me with these horrible sensations. One of the things in somatic experiencing and in relationships is that we don't go right to the worst part of a trauma, that we find a counter experience, embody a counter experience, feel it in our bodies And so what happened when I was guided by my student, uh, and I came up with this memory when I was about, let's see, um, I must have been about 4 or 5 years old. And in the middle of the night or early in the morning, my parents snuck into my bedroom and they laid the track of a model train set, the tracks underneath my bed, out into the room, back to the other side of the room, and then back underneath the bed
Hmm.
again. And so when I awoke, the train was going around this track. And I don't know exactly how excited, that hardly covers it, exhilarated, it's a little bit closer. But anyhow, I jumped out of bed and went to the transformer so I could control the speed of the train and make the whistle go, hoot, hoot. And in that moment, I didn't have the words for it. But even though I had had some horrible things happen with my parents over my lifespan, I knew in that moment that I was cared for and that I was loved. And that is a key experience for people, even if it's only a single time, that can make all the difference in the world. And so from there, I was able then to go to and gradually enter into and renegotiate the experience of the violence of the brutal rape that I experienced. And to be able to shift back and forth between those images, between those memories, between those bodily states, I was able to put that in the past where it belonged. And the other thing that I talk about in the book is the struggle I've had over my lifetime about relationships and how my trauma history dominated some of my relationships and how I had the advantage, the blessing of being with some wonderful, wonderful lovers that have really supported me in my journey and my growth.
Hmm.
And I just feel in a way so honored to have had those experiences with them. And yeah, yeah. And actually, there's one of the chapters. It's the most important the most important women in my life. There's also most important men too, but and most people when they see that they think, oh, this is going to be about his different relationships with his lovers. And actually, that part is not about the relationship with my lovers, but about women in my life who have supported my growth, who have taken me underneath their wings
Hmm.
and have taken me to new, deeper understandings. And so, again, to put all of this together in the book really gave me this sense that I was supported, that I was cared for, that I was loved, and that I was on my journey.
So I have to ask, when you woke up from the dream that made the decision for you to actually turn it into a book and release it to the world and let the pages land as they may, did you go back to Laura and tell her you were right?
Oh, yes. No, I did. I absolutely did. I absolutely did. Okay. First to Laura, whose unwavering editorial guidance has been a beacon throughout this endeavor. Her astute challenge to areas of inconsistency or ambiguity in my thoughts have been truly indispensable. So she became my editor when I wrote the book. And yeah, I mean, she's helped me with other books too. Very smart, scary smart. So yeah, no, I mea culpa. I mean, I didn't just apologize, but I said, okay, maybe you could help partner me in this endeavor.
Hmm.
And that's what she did. And that's what she did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something there too that reminds me of the ways that like sometimes conflict in relationship, you can lose the thread of the gifts that your partner is offering you when
Yeah,
you're arguing about something. And
really, really. Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. That was again a lesson to really honor the parts of her. I mean, we had disagreements a lot of times in working on the book. I mean, pretty significant thing. And, and sometimes I would say, I would think it over and I'd say, you're right. And other times I would say, I'm sorry, this is my book. But, we really got stuck for long in cooperating with, writing this book. And yeah. Yeah. So again, I think that's one of the areas that we have a close relationship, actually. When you look, I mean, I think for every relationship, the reason, if you want to call it a reason, is that it's a learning experience. It's an accelerated learning experience.
mm,
It's like having psychotherapy, uh, you know, uh, uh, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day,
right. Yeah.
and to be able to have a project that you're both interested in and both have different gifts in. I think that was also a big part of our relationships,
Right.
or right, our relationships.
Yeah. Well, I think that is maybe a hallmark too of what keeps relationships strong over time in general. And sometimes that project is the family that you're creating, or
Mhm.
sometimes
That's
that
right.
that project
That's
is the
right.
home that you've created, or
Yes.
you're,
Yeah.
tending your group of friends, and how you like, so there are any number of ways. It doesn't have to be a book that divulges everything to the
No,
world,
no,
right?
it's to have something that you're both interested in and committed to
Right.
and learning from
Yeah.
each other. With most couples, it is about children, marriage and about children. And she's had 4 children or 2 biological kids. And so she's had that experience. For me, I probably, if I had a family, I wouldn't have been able to really develop somatic experience. That really is the therapy that evolved out of my life's work.
Mm.
And so I didn't have that experience. But still, for me, procreation, I think about procreation, for creation. And I think that's also a lot about creativity. And I think both of us really honor our own creativity and our co-creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. In some earlier trainings that I did with Chloe Madonis, like this was
Oh, yeah.
15 years ago now, she talked a lot about the importance as in a couple of figuring out how you're going to grow and what you're going to offer to the world together.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Actually, we met Chloe several years ago, and I think she lives sort of in the same area that I do. And she's also into tango,
Oh,
into
interesting.
dance. Yeah, and we never followed it through, but we were hoping to get together and maybe to do some tango together. Yeah, I think she lives about 15 minutes from me.
Oh, funny. Yeah, well, that should happen if it's still
No,
in the cards.
absolutely. I wrote it down. I wrote it
Oh,
down.
good. Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering, this made me curious about when you've worked with clients and they've been really locked down, and
Mhm,
obviously they're there to work with you.
mhm.
So, but I imagine that for many of them, it's so scary, right? To look
Yeah,
in the face of
sure.
whatever, even
Yeah.
if they don't know, like they just know
Mhm.
something is there.
Yeah, yeah. There's a haunting, a ghost, or something like that.
Yeah.
Symptom.
So how do you find yourself? I mean, obviously so much, I imagine and I've seen you work with people, so I know you enter the space a bit more like an artist where it's like, let's see what this person has to offer. But I'm wondering if you have a general sense of how you approach a situation like that when the other person is just, yeah, like, but they're an actual client that you're working with.
Right. Well, again, I see it as an unfolding.
Hmm.
And, you know, I have a couple of rules. I call it the rule of three. And if you get something significant about the person that you're working with in the first 3 minutes, then they will be evoking their curiosity and looking at what goes on inside them.
Hmm.
But if you don't, you may be stumbling around for a while till you really get that thread, find that thread. And then the other thing of my rule of three is after every session, I want to find at least 3 times when I made mistakes or maybe said better, where I could have done things differently, or in the future I could do things differently. So I'm learning from every session I do with somebody.
Hmm.
So it's like gaining knowledge, gaining skills. And it is a cooperative experience. We're really working together. And yeah. And you know, if people become two things can get into, well, one thing can get into the way of working with uh, people with trauma. And that first thing is that they see themselves as victims. You kind of have to find a way around that before you can really begin to work. And the other thing is if you can get them to be curious about what's going on with them. So getting something important about them and then finding a way to to evoke that life force in a person.
Hmm. Curiosity is so powerful in a moment
It
like that, for
surely is,
sure.
and necessary, and necessary.
So getting back when you were talking about working your rule of three, and um, it got me thinking about our theme of like the conflict and the fight, and how you kind of re-enter the dance with your partner.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I was thinking, right, that like in a moment being able to get curious as another option. We talked about offering your vulnerability. This is like, um, what can you do when you're interacting with your partner that remind them that you care about them, that you're curious about them, that,
Yeah, right. I mean, that's again another way in, I think. And again, what's kind of worked for me ish is we're sitting together and I take her hand and I hold her arm, her wrist, and I just say, I'm here. That's it. I'm here. Yeah.
right,
And which is saying, I'm inviting you to meet me. And I'm here. I'm here. But you have to be telling the truth.
right,
You have to really be here for the other person, but I'm here. Again, both of those are not easy, but they're important ways to build a relationship. I have a goddaughter, and she's like, I think she just turned 17 or something, maybe 18. And she came out to visit me in Zurich, in Switzerland. And she has two friends there that she's very close to. So the four of us went and spent the day together. And Youngsam, she's a daughter of my Tibetan friend. She has this boyfriend, and you can see they're a bit enmeshed. So anyhow, later than that, or after that, I was talking to my goddaughter, and I said, I just asked her, are you seeing somebody right now? And she said, when you first get into a relationship, you get really high. She said, I'm high and not getting into a relationship. I thought that was wonderful, Jada. That was just wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something to that. When I think about my earliest and actually a lot of my adult relationships, it took me a long time, I think, to learn that level of feeling feeling good in myself enough
Yeah.
and not necessarily needing that validation, and then also just really enjoying the wholeness of life and cherishing what life has to offer you, whether you're partnered or
Exactly.
not.
That's right. To be alive, to be alive and real.
Yeah.
Again, when I wrote the book, the commitment that I made to myself when things got hot or challenging, the commitment I made that I would tell my truth wherever it would go.
Hmm.
And there were again some areas about sexual relationships and how that was awakened to me in a different way, and how I could also help my other lovers over time to open to their own deep erotic sense. So, again, I think part of what the glue for a relationship is to be able to share an erotic, and I don't mean a sexual, not like a titillation, but to share a deepening of experience, to be able to just like lay together and breathe together and to take and to go where that would go. Sometimes it would go to some deep emotional wounding. Sometimes it would go to a beatific, blissful state, but to follow it wherever it would lead, and to do that as a commitment with our lover that we share, and not just going into a sex thing. After I'm writing another book, another book right now called Trauma and Spirituality,
Hmm.
Resilience and the Human Spirit. And I'm in that process. And the book after that, if I'm still writing books, I think I will be, is one that I'm going to be doing with Laura, my partner. And this is a book on healthy sex for adolescents,
Hmm.
deep sex for adolescents. And to go from, I mean, where do kids learn about sex? In the US, not everywhere, but in the US, just absolutely, sex education is pornography.
Right, right.
The guys think it's pornography. That's what they're supposed to be doing. And the girls think that's what they're supposed to be doing. And it's horrible. It's destructive. They'll never be, with that happening, they're not going to have any relationship issues. I mean, they're going to have only relationship issues. They're not going to be able to make that connection, that felt heart to heart, pelvis to pelvis connection. So I want to, write that book. Well, one of my really good friends and colleagues, she actually wrote one of the endorsements for the autobiography of trauma, is Diane Richardson,
Hmm.
and she's written a number of books
Yeah.
uh,
She's been on
on.
our show a few times.
Oh,
So
has she? Yeah, but
yeah,
she's
yeah,
great. She's a really good friend.
yeah.
And one of her books is Slow Sex.
Hmm.
But the thing, like exercises with, especially for women, young women,
Hmm.
but also for men, to learn how to make boundaries physically so that they can say no and that will be respected. And
Yeah.
of course, the boys have to learn to respect them, but the girls really need, and I'm speaking in terms of heterosexual relationships, and there are different kinds of relationships. But again, to be able to roar, to really feel what it feels like in your body to set and to make a boundary. And, uh, one of my other god kids, Oshin, I think he was 17 and his girlfriend was 16. And his mother called me up and she said, God, Daddy Peter, I need your help. I need your help. I said, well, what's going on, Catherine? And she said, Oshin wants to close the door to his bedroom when he's with his girlfriend. And I said, well, and she's had back problems,
Hmm.
Catherine Kessler. And I said, well, would you rather they do that in the back of the car and wind up with back problems like you, or they do it in a good, safe place? And she says, oh, thank you, Grandpa Daddy. And and then I talked with him. We had a really lovely talk. And I asked him if he felt that was something that he could do with just holding hands and breathing together, and then just to explore each other's bodies, not just their genitals, but every part of their bodies, and contacting their forehead, contacting their neck, contacting their shoulders, and then learning about that, about the erotic sense, and sharing that.
Hmm.
And and he was in a relationship for a while, and and he knew when the relationship was over, and he knew what he had learned, and then he was open to his next relationship. And since I've known him, he's had, I think, 3 or 4 different relationships, and each of them have been learning experiences in different ways. One person was probably about 15 years older than he, and he learned something about that part of the aging process from her.
Hmm.
So yeah. So again, I think it's something that if we're open to curiosity and to exploration, I think each relation can open us to new dimensions, to new. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I did. It's cool. I didn't know that you and Diana were connected personally, so it's kind of a
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
neat
We've taught
connection to.
together.
You have? Oh, I didn't realize
Hmm.
that. That's amazing. Yeah, she actually reached out to me recently. I need to follow up with that.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, and I love what you're talking about because I think that it's an important way of illustrating how all these things weave together, right?
yeah.
That in order to show up for sex in the ways that you're talking about that are slow, connected, relaxed, very present, you need to be able to be with yourself as well as another person in those moments.
That's right. That's right.
And I think
And
that's
then,
so often
yeah,
why that doesn't
yeah.
happen is because the other way of connecting, very dopamine fueled, it's fun, and I
Yeah,
don't
it's
knock
exciting. It's exciting.
it,
And I mean, you can't tell a teenager, well, don't do that, don't feel that.
for
But you
sure.
get then let's start. That could be a starting place, and let's see what happens then if we can tamper things down from that high arousal state. And in working, doing therapy work, people have asked me in different ways and different times, well, is it possible to work with teenagers, or is it possible to work with old people? And I thought for a minute, and I said, yeah. I mean, those are the two ages that are most enthusiastic in doing their inner work.
Hmm.
Yeah, both older people. I mean, I work with people into their late 90s, and work with, the adolescents from different people that I knew,
Mm-hmm.
when something would come up and they'd have, whatever. And again, they just like really got into, and then uh, learned about themselves in healing different traumas that might have happened to them. Because sometimes they've seen a robbery or something, violent, and so they're really pretty, deeply upset.
Mm.
But when we work with that, then that is a way that opens up to this other quality of self-care, of deepening feelings, deepening sensations, and deepening feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, with my kids, that's been an important part of, I think, my own growth process, maybe theirs as well. But I've put so much energy into showing up, trying to be present for them as best I can, trying to make space for them to feel safe feeling what they feel. And this is just like the briefest of summaries, but then when as they've been blossoming into being teenagers and having boyfriends and girlfriends and everything, being willing as a parent to trust and to recognize that the
Mm.
conversation continues to be about
Yeah,
how does that make you feel? What do you like? Are you able to give voice to how that makes you feel? Are you able to take space when you need it? Are you able to make a boundary when you need it? And if you weren't, what was that like for you? And how, so it's like for me, that's kind of where the parenting
yeah.
I think has started
How
to
old are your
happen.
kids? How old are your kids now?
Yeah, my daughter is about to turn 16 and my
Oh,
son about to turn 18. So,
wow.
yeah. Yeah, very different than when you and I met. I think I think
Right, right. Yes.
that
Little
yeah.
ones. And then parents are having to deal with a lot of this stuff around gender,
Mhm.
which is very likely that's not what they've experienced, in their
Right.
adolescence, and how to be there for their kids, and try to understand their needs and what's going on for them. It's really trying. And again, I think if we can take that perspective, that we don't know anybody's story.
Right.
So we just have the privilege to learn about their story, so I think that's helped me in working with adolescents. I'm not in private practice anymore. I haven't been in private practice for many years. But again, with everybody I've ever worked with, if I set to me as a goal to learn about who they are and how they are and what they think and what they feel, then I'm doing my job.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's often what gets lost in a relationship when you've been with someone for a long time. It's
Yeah,
easy to feel like you know the story, you're part of the story, you're even
right.
the main character in their story.
Yeah,
And to forget, like, no, it continues, that they have their own story, their own experience, and there's something
yeah,
there to be
yeah.
learned from them.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Couples that I know that have been in long-term relationships, that they're into their 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, that they often tell me that they're just learning about the partner, just beginning to learn. I think that's a really honest statement.
What do you think they mean when they say that?
I think they mean exactly what they're saying, that they really didn't get to know the person until they lived with them for long, long periods of time.
Mm,
Parts that people have, you know, kept hidden, or people that, we might not have just been curious enough to kind of draw that forth in the person.
right.
I mean,
Or just the
how
way
does
that,
it, yeah, I'm just saying, how do we ever even get to know anybody? We have to be wanting to do that first of all,
yep,
then patient, and then pursuing, and then being curious.
right. And
Being
then when
curious.
you're finding out about someone, how do you avoid taking it personally? Like, how do you avoid making it about you? so
right.
that you
Yeah,
can continue feeling safe being curious, and also they can continue to feel safe with you offering
right, right. Yeah,
that
yeah,
level
yeah.
of transparency about who they are.
Yeah. It's kind of like often my experience is that my partner is very critical of me.
Hmm.
And I totally get that that's the way her father was with her. And he didn't have to do anything but just look at her, with his eyes, and she knew that she had made a mistake.
Mm.
And so when I'm imagining that she's being critical with me, I go back to thinking about how it was when she shared with me, how things were with her parents, with her family. So I think, again, getting to know each other and not taking it personally, because you take it personally, you're just going to be reactive. And again, that's going to blow up in everybody's face. We're going to have custard pie in everybody's face. It's Thanksgiving down here, so I'm getting ready to go for a Thanksgiving dinner, even though it's not a Thanksgiving thing that they do in Mexico.
And have you found a way that works in your relationship when you feel like Laura is being critical of you to like get beyond that, to figure out what's really going on?
Yeah, as I say, sometimes I just have to kind of feel it through, and other times I just say, no, I don't accept that.
Hmm.
There's a sense of anger, but it's not throwing anger in the person's face. It's using the anger to be able to, I think more than anything, to set my boundary. No, I don't accept that.
Hmm.
I simply don't accept it. And sometimes that way will kind of slow her down and even stop her to where she can reflect on her own experience. So, it's kind of like, it's not always just, kind of like trying to be more and more vulnerable, because that sometimes is a way to work, but also to say no, I don't experience that. That's not my experience.
Hmm. Yeah.
And to be firm, but not negative, but firm.
Yeah. Yeah, I even think you can do that around when you see that you're entering a familiar relationship pattern that you know hasn't really worked for you both together in the past. Like that's
Yeah,
another place where I think you can say, "Hey, I don't this is not the relationship that we deserve to have." Like
yeah, yeah,
I
something like that. Let's
I
just stop. Let's stop. Halt.
right. I refuse to keep going down this road. We know where it
Right.
goes.
That's what
What
yeah, yeah,
else is available to us right
yeah, yeah.
here?
What else is new? Right. I think another thing that Laura and I have together at this point is that we're both in the aging process. And I think we both live under the delusion that aging is a gradual process. But she's kind of brought my attention to the probability that it goes in big steps sometimes. You're going
Mm,
fine down a little bit, and then there's something that's, a big change. So I think, like, actually, the final chapter in my book, Autobiography of Trauma, um, is called Living My Dying.
mm,
And it's about how I'm beginning to meet my my later years.
hmm.
And what I've come to, I'll show you this actually, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
So it's reconnecting with this curious, vital,
Mm,
playful, even though he had some trauma, but had a lot of trauma after that. But to reconnect with that enthusiasm, in theos, with God, and letting that connection be my guide into my later years.
yeah.
So I think, Laura and I are trying to, you know, because right now in my life, I've basically gotten the somatic experiencing work. It's now not on my shoulders anymore. It's on the shoulders of about 50 plus, 52 teachers to about 70,000 people. So that's off my shoulders. So, for me, writing is a meditation. And again, it's a way of Laura and I working together. And so I'm doing my writing in places which also nourish my spirit, nourish my soul. So last year we were in Costa Rica. Right now I'm here in with my writing partner, different partner, and enjoying the day. We just came back from swimming. It's really bolsters my health,
Mm.
my aliveness. And so Laura and I are probably going to be going to some place. We haven't quite decided yet where it will be to do some writing, and again in a place which is nourishing.
Mm.
So to nourish my soul, to nourish my mind, to nourish my spirit, and to enjoy the years I have left in my life.
Yeah. Um, if and also for if you're listening to us and you're not watching us, just so you know, Peter held up a picture of himself when he was really young. That was who he
Yeah, like
says he was
18 months, probably.
reconnecting with. Um, would you be willing to take a moment to share? I mean, I didn't anticipate us going there, but since you brought it up, that you feel on some level like you're on this trajectory and you know what lies ahead, right? Of course, it's in many ways it's totally unknown what lies
That's right.
ahead.
That's right. Yeah.
I just read Irv Yalom's book that he wrote with his wife when she had terminal cancer,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it feels a little funny to be confessing this to you because I know you're a little bit older than me, but it's also something that I'm thinking about a lot. Is just like
Yeah.
where if I'm
Where it's
lucky,
the trajectory. Yeah.
exactly. If I'm lucky, I'll have another 50 years that are healthy and vibrant, and maybe I will, maybe I won't. What is it like for you to just like as you contemplate like however many years you have left?
Yeah. Well, as I say, that was really my motivation for writing an autobiography of trauma,
Mm-hmm.
to really find that trajectory, to see
Yeah.
where I've come from, what's happened in the middle of my life, and where I'm going in my my aging
Mm-hmm.
process.
Yeah.
And it's another mystery
Mm.
to uncover. You know, Yogi Berra is one of my favorite people in the world. He was the catcher for the New York Yankees.
Uh-huh.
And he and his wife were talking because I think he was born in Ohio, and then they lived in New Jersey when he was playing for the Yankees. And she said, he was in his aging process. And she said, Yogi, when you die, where would you like to be buried? In Ohio or New Jersey? And he said, oh dear, why don't you just surprise me? And that's my model for dealing with aging.
Well, it will be a surprise, that's for sure.
It will be a surprise. But, yeah, yeah. I think to live fully, I think that's the task,
Hmm.
to live fully.
Yeah.
And honestly, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Question, have I done enough in my life? That's affirmative. I can say, yes, I have done enough. The other question is, am I enough? That's still a work in progress. And I think that's one of the reasons, the motivations for writing the autobiography of trauma,
Hmm.
is to really find that place, that innocent 18-month-old where I am enough just as I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We come into the world. I mean, we need so much, right? We couldn't survive without
Yeah,
some
sure.
help. But yeah, we're complete. And then somewhere in
Things
as we,
happen.
yeah, things happen. And then we get
Yeah.
to rediscover that, hopefully.
Yeah.
Originally, I thought our interview was going to end here. But once I sat with everything we'd covered, I realized that there were a few more key questions that we needed to answer so that you would have even more at your fingertips when you're facing conflict or challenges in your relationship. So I asked Peter if he'd be willing to sit down for a very practical part two, and that's what you're about to hear. We ended up having such a productive conversation that we decided to co-teach a workshop called Regulate to Communicate on how to stay present and relaxed no matter how challenging the situation. If that sounds like it could be useful for you, just visit neilsattin.com/workshop for the details. In the meantime, let's get back to my conversation with Peter.
If I understand, you wanted to add something to what we talked about last time, or was ist das?
The one piece that I felt like, oh, I really wish I had asked Peter this question,
Uh,
that felt like it was missing for me is how much I would imagine like when someone has a traumatic experience, let's say
yeah,
at the lake, and then whenever they're going by the lake, like just the sight of the water or whatever
sure,
could
sure.
create a response in them.
Yeah,
That there are, I think, ways that people in relationship can traumatize each other,
but each
big or
other. Yeah,
little, and
yeah,
then like the sight of their partner gets them
yeah. Right.
dysregulated, or the sound of their voice or whatever it is. And so I was hoping that we could borrow some of the wisdom of how you work with people around situations like the lake and
Okay.
how they might work with that sense of like, oh, like just the sound of my partner's voice, that doesn't feel good to me. I want to avoid that, which
Yeah,
as you can imagine, that's
right.
going to
That's
be
going to be a
super
problem. That's
problematic
going to
if
be a
you're,
problem.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe we could just dive in there.
Okay. Although I think it's surprisingly maybe more common than you would think.
Hmm.
You know, it happens a lot.
Right.
And and I think like there's been an emphasis like on attachment issues and so forth, which I think is important. But I think it misses this point that you're just asking about right now, that you're talking about right now. Well, I'm trying to place the start here. Let's just say that something happens in your life when you feel angry. But let's just say this happens around the time that you're with your partner. And we generally will attribute that to the partner. Like, you are making me angry.
Right.
But that's just part one. So, but then you kind of forget about it. At least I put forget in quotations. And then just at another time when you're with the person, just being with them triggers a anger like the anger that was originally triggered. And then we go into very often into blame and blame of the other person for the anger. So what starts, you might say, as an irrelevant anger, that and it happens sequentially around the time when you went your partner originally, and then now there's an echo of that, a shadow of that often. And so, okay, so what happens if every time you're with them, you feel anger?
Hmm.
Well, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that in a productive way? And I think that's one of the challenges is to say, wait a minute, okay, this is my anger. This is an opportunity in a way to deal with my anger. And if we have, for my taste, a good relationship, a healthy relationship, will say, okay, let's just back off a little bit and let's each of us deal with what's coming up for us in this moment. And I mean, know, when people fall in love and they have no idea what's going to really where that's going to go. This is the way it is 95% of the time. Something happens, we're in love, and that overrides everything. And it overrides any negative emotions that might be coming up.
Right.
So again, we have this opportunity to deal with them more or less on the front end before they become more entrenched. And that is the problem because again, then every time you're with the person, there's this, you're not aware of it maybe, but there is again this shadow of anger, and there must be a reason for the anger, and then we tend to blame the partner, and a lot of relationships end, unfortunately, on that note. So again, in a mature relationship, in a authentic relationship, we we agree with each other when things like that happen, that we will be taking some moments, time out, and then either to work with them on our own or work with them together with our partner. Sometimes we have to work with them on our own first, and then we can work with them on our partner. But I mean, again, you can think of the frustration and the sadness that goes on when we're unable to untangle those kind of reactive modes.
Right. Right. So there's like initially at least a willingness that you have to recognize, oh, I'm having this response to my partner, and so that represents something within me that I want to handle in some fashion. So
Yeah, that's right.
if I had that realization, what would you suggest for a person? And maybe it would be like similar to what you might suggest to
Yeah.
someone if they were suddenly averse to going to the lake because of some bad thing that had
Right.
happened.
I take their hand and we'd walk together to the lake. And I think, again, that's an important thing. If we can see ourselves literally as partners, not just a name, but they were partners in this journey through life.
Mm.
So let's again use the example of anger or fear. That's a pretty typical one.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so if every time you see your your partner, you feel this gut wrench or constriction in the chest, throat. So one of the things, for example, about fear and anger, also similarly, is that it's made up of three components. It's made up of a sensation, and I'm talking about a bodily sensation,
Yep.
but also with a particular image that comes up like an intrusive image, and a thought or a series of thoughts. So the three of those are coupled together. So the real trick is to uncouple the sensations from the thoughts, from any images that are associated with those thoughts, and then to take just a little bit of time, because the sensation is the one that really is the trickier part. Because when we say, okay, we have the thought, okay, because that could be important, because maybe this is a time when I was really scared, when I was in a relationship some years ago, and the person said they didn't want to be with me anymore. And so every time I'm again with the partner, when are they gonna drop me? When are they gonna say, I don't want to be in a relationship with you anymore?
Right.
So what are the sensations? What are the memories associated with that? And if we can do that and make it like a practice, an emotional practice, a spiritual practice, then our relationships can really open up to deeper awareness of self and other.
Yeah. And do you have any hints for how to accompany someone through that? So, yeah, if you're in partnership, it would be great to be able to go to your partner and say, "Hey, when I see you right now, I feel this swell of tension in my chest." And so if you're a partner and you're getting this, you're receiving it, what's a good way to show up to help the person feel understood and
Well,
received?
to make this as a practice takes practice. So again, it's an agreement like, what now that we've gone through the falling in love part, is there enough left that that we can take next steps. And I think, and again, I think it's a mature conversation that needs to go on between the partners and making a mutual agreement that one person at a time, you can't usually do it both at the same time, to be the experiencer, and then to be the person that's with them. Like in the image of the lake, to what would you do? Well, I would just say, if it's okay, let's just hold hands here and just walk a little bit towards this lake, or towards an image of a lake, just a little bit, and then feel the sensations of that. Feel the, you know, and then we agree that this is going to be not the entirety, but a next part of our relationship, which is for self. Um, I don't say self improvement, but self development, development of a here and now self. And I think that's one of the rich things that, if we're willing and if we have the courage to cultivate that in relationship, but it takes persistence, and it takes courage.
Yeah. Yeah, and a willingness to be flexible around your stories, I think, around the other person, around the ways that you got there
That's
to
right.
begin
And to
with.
recognize them
Right.
as stories that we're telling ourselves. So again, of course, there are these thoughts, there may be images, likely images, but really the one that we can work with the most, or the one that gives us the most traction, Archimedes said, give me a place to put my lever and I'll move the world. Well, the body sensations are that fulcrum.
Yeah.
And so again, if the other person is just there with it, that's their only job, is to just be present, then we're much, much more able to move through it with that. There's a Motown song that goes, it takes one to stand in the dark alone. It takes two to let the light shine through. So again, just having that other be there for us, they don't have to say anything. They just have to feel their own ground, their own center, their own their own inner knowing, and then they're just there for you, given that connection to themselves. And it's not going to work all the time,
Right.
because sometimes the other person is triggered by our trigger. But with practice, there's a man I know. He does very beautiful work on adult attachment repair model, and basically, you work with holding a stick together. And I think that's another thing that couples can do. They can just hold that end of the stick, so they
Mm,
can feel the connection, but the connection is more in a safe way. They
right.
don't have to be too intimate. So again, to just allow the person to be there, they're the anchor, and then you can do your exploration.
Got it. Got it. And if you're on the other side, like let's say your partner says something to you like, I can't stand the sight of you, or I'm not going to the lake today because I can't stand to go to the lake, just to like neutralize it a little bit. Is there a way that we can invite the other person to consider that there may be some way to address it? Baby, you
Hmm.
can't stand the sight of me, and
Yeah. Right. Well, that's not so easy to not take that personally, right?
right, right.
But again, we have to have enough self-knowledge that that may not be reality, that it's some echo from the past.
Hmm.
And again, maybe even to, sometimes when people get married, they sometimes they do it in a traditional way, but sometimes they write what they want from themselves and from the other person. And so I think maybe doing says something like that with each other, what I want from you when I feel stuck, what I need from you when I feel stuck.
Hmm.
And then just to say, okay, now it's my turn. No, first it's your, okay, it's your turn. Then I'm there for you. Then, okay, then we can maybe switch a room. I mean, I think it's best if we can just do that uh, one at a time, and the other person have a time later, maybe even if it's just an hour or so different or a day or so different, to just kind of process on our own what's going on, and then having the partner be there for us with with their exploration.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
I
think it's
mean,
worth mentioning that when couples are in a situation like this, it's generally because there's been some sort of rupture of safety in the relationship. And
sure,
so there's work to be done there to rebuild a container that feels safe enough to do those
right.
explorations together.
Yeah. I mean, right. Sometimes if there has been a rupture, a significant rupture in the relationship, um, I think then part of it is we have to do our own therapy work first,
Yeah,
and then we can better be there for each other. But I think if there's been the rupture, and to do individual work and maybe to do couples work together,
for sure.
then we are able to do that afterwards as a practice.
Yeah.
But again, if it's a rupture that occurred, I mean, it could be. I mean, relationships have ruptures,
Hmm.
relationships have infidelities, and so forth. So we might need to start there therapeutically, and also work with the rupture in the relationship, as a couple, and then to continue that as our emotional work, our spiritual development.
Yeah. As a point of curiosity, we chatted about fear and about anger. I'm just curious to know, have you ever worked with someone around disgust and like
Yes,
had them actually overcome a disgust for a thing or a
yeah.
person?
Again, that's a tough one because if the person says, "I feel disgusted when I'm with you," well, you can see already on my mouth,
Yeah.
there's the disgust. So again, if we don't have any basis to start with that, it's going to be difficult to not take that personally.
Hmm.
But again, disgust is a very specific component of shame.
Mm.
So what they're really saying is, when I'm with you right now, I feel shame. And that's something you can't just do with each other. Again, you need some help from a therapist who knows what they're doing.
For sure.
Uh, but one of the ways that I work with disgust slash shame, is the posture. So there's the turning of the lips, the
Hmm.
looking down and looking away. And so I might have the person just do the first part, like of feeling the disgust in the lips, touch into it, come back to the here and now. Then the slightly looking away and down, and then slowly coming back up and just settling there. And then again, going into it a little bit of further, and then just hovering there for some moments and then coming back up, up, up. But again, you need to do that, be able to do that with a therapist. But that can make a big difference. I mean, shame is the killer. It
Mm.
really is. Shame kills the self, it kills relationships. So if shame is coming, we have to work with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And work with a therapist who knows how to work with shame.
right. Right. And
A lot of times therapists, when the shame comes up in a session, because of their own unresolved shame issues, they'll deflect their client to move away from the shame.
mm,
So again, you have to find a therapist who's done their own. Well, in general, I wouldn't want to go to a therapist who hasn't done their own work.
right.
Kind
Right.
of on the wounded healer. In my autobiography, the autobiography of trauma, I really talk about my Chiron, how I worked with my woundings, which made me, I was going to say, a better therapist, but makes it possible for me to be there with somebody else in that grounded way, in the way that I know that I'm there. I can be there for that client because I'm able to be there for myself, with myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think where the light is shining through, perhaps with you and me here together, is is the hope that like even something like disgust is something that you could work through, and
Exactly. It's all doable.
yeah,
You know, these are not traits necessarily. They're things that come, but also things that come are also things that can go,
mm-hmm,
you
right,
know. And when we don't work on it, then it becomes more and more like a trait.
right,
So again, we want to get some traction on it before we really try to do that with each other. And I would say, even again, to do it with each other in a therapeutic setting so that we get to practice, because again, these are skills, they're necessary skills, and it takes time to develop. So again, I would suggest to work together with a therapist and then for them to be there for each other with the therapist there also as a guide.
yeah,
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I have to think honestly how many times I do that with a relationship. And when I do it and they also engage that way, how our relationship goes to a deeper level.
right, right. Well, Peter, I really appreciate your willingness to like get back on and chat about this.
Sure.
I think it's an important point, and you're right that like maybe sometimes you can't get past something like this.
Mm, that's
But
right.
my hope, and this is why I was thinking about it after our conversation, is I would love for someone in that situation to hear this conversation and to think,
Yeah.
I wonder if this is
Mm.
something
Hmm.
that we could
Yeah.
do. And maybe that
Right.
sets them on a path of discovery that
Right.
leads to, oh, we can actually come back together here. Or
Yeah.
maybe they're like, you know what, there's not enough here. There's not enough safety. There's no traction for me to get leverage. And then you make a different choice in a moment like
Yeah.
that.
That's right. But to make that choice in an informed way,
Yeah.
which again means really doing our own work,
Yeah. It always comes
right?
down to us doing our own thing, right?
It does. It
Keep
really
showing
does,
up.
right?
Well, Peter, thanks
All
for
right.
coming back to have
Oh,
this
sure.
conversation with us, and
Yeah, I hope it's helpful.
super helpful.